Mr. Zuckerberg, I remember well your first visit to Capitol Hill back in 2010. You spoke to the Senate Republican High-Tech Task Force, which I chair. You said back then that Facebook would always be free. Is that still your objective?
Senator, yes. There will always be a version of Facebook that is free. It is our mission to try to help connect everyone around the world and to bring the world closer together. In order to do that, we believe that we need to offer a service that everyone can afford, and we're committed to doing that.
Well, if so, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
I see.
At the end of the day, there is no free lunch, especially when it comes to social media and the internet. The entire internet economy is literally based off of surveillance. And that's something that we really need to think long and hard. Is that a sustainable business model to protect our privacy and protect our families and protect our kids moving forward?
What we need to think about is how can we continue with a light touch, deregulated approach, but one where people have the information they need to know what's being done and whether they consent to it or not. And so that's why I think we need to have a really big focus on transparency, on privacy, on a level playing field across the board so that people understand what's happening and they can make decisions in a way that they're not able to very clearly right now.
It isn't obvious that regulators are fast enough to keep up with the tech world. They're going to be 5 years behind the game. That's like 100 years. That's like wrestling with Victorian England, you know? It seems to me that it would be better in many ways if there were multiple competing search engines and if there were multiple Facebooks, because at least then we'd have a diversity of ethical conundrums instead of this totalitarian conundrum that we have right now.
My concern at this point is that I don't think a lot of people in government really fully understand the extent of the problem. I don't think they really understand what they're up against.
I mean, these are massive, massive technological changes, and they're all happening in parallel. We have no idea what the consequences of that are going to be. So my concern fundamentally is that these machines will reflect us ethically. And that should be frightening because I wouldn't say that our ethical house is particularly in order. So they're going to magnify what we are. That's making the presumption that the thing that we're building will be a good thing. And I don't think that it will be a good thing because it will reflect us.
If they have this kind of power, then democracy is an illusion. The free and fair election doesn't exist. There have to be in place numerous safeguards to make sure not only that they don't exercise these powers, but that they can't exercise these powers. The internet belongs to all of us. It does not belong to Google or Facebook.
I mean, we have empirical evidence that Google is participating in self-serving bias in a way that directly harms consumers. As a society, as a democracy, anytime you have concentration at the levels they are in the information sector, it should be concerning because they really are now more powerful than governments. They are a form of regulator, but they are a private regulator with no democratic accountability.
I can't believe in a system in which the power is separate from the people. We're talking about, some pretty arrogant people, in my opinion, who think of themselves as gods of sort, and who really want to have a complete hold over humanity. These are basically big mind control machines, and mind control machines, they're really good at controlling minds. It's going to be harder and harder to fight them if we don't do so, I would say, as soon as possible. The more rope we give them, the sooner we are all hanged.
I don't believe our species can survive unless we fix this. We cannot have a society in which if two people wish to communicate, the only way that can happen is if it's financed by a third person who wishes to manipulate them.
The traditional notion of totalitarianism was resting on the premise or the idea that a government would try to achieve total control over your life. And they would do it by using the might and muscle of government to do so under compulsion. Well, today we essentially have a totalitarian force in the world, and that is these large tech companies. But guess what? They didn't use stormtroopers, they didn't use the gulag, they didn't use the arrest of political prisoners to accomplish it. We all opted in to do it ourselves. We volunteered for this arrangement. And we live in a world today where these tech giants have a level of control and an ability to manipulate us that Stalin, Mao, Hitler, and Mussolini could only have dreamed of. The power is immense, and we are essentially trusting these large tech companies to make the right and good decision for us. I, for one, am not prepared to cede that level of power to these individuals.
In the meantime, if the companies won't change, delete your accounts, okay?